So we're going to go to 18205, the administration agreement for the permanent shelter at 1220 Natividad, and I'll turn it over to our Community Development Director.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and Council members. I'm pleased to be before you to push forward our long-term solution for homelessness, which is to build a permanent homeless shelter at 1220 Natividad. Before you is a resolution that authorizes the city manager to enter into an administration agreement with the County of Monterey, establishing the City of Salinas as lead project manager for the overall selection of a future developer and operator for a permanent homeless shelter and ideally permanent supportive housing at 1220 Natividad. And this would allow us, once we select a developer, to help with crafting a exclusive negotiating agreement. This is similar to what we did with Mid-Penn Housing. So real quick, the city in September 2017, we executed an MOU to establish a temporary warming shelter. But in that MOU, we discussed the need for a permanent solution, not to have to do this every year. And we identified 1220 Natividad as the suitable site for the permanent homeless shelter and supportive housing. The agreement, as I mentioned, this is an administration agreement that would allow the city to serve as project manager to facilitate the development. This is actually giving our kind of city know-how to help facilitate it. It's not entering into any agreement for funding. As you know, we've discussed 1220 Natividad. The site is located between Natividad and Laurel. We have talked, so I'll just kind of gloss over a little bit of the PowerPoint, but the homeless population now increased 57% since 2015, and now the city's homeless population is estimated to be almost 1,400 individuals. And so we know that we need to focus on long-term solutions to get people into housing as soon as possible, and we also need a shelter, a permanent shelter, replace the temporary warming shelter, and to reduce the overall funding commitments that we have to make year after year. So before you is a simple administration agreement that would allow us as a city to kind of be the county's facilitator towards this goal of having this permanent homeless shelter and permanent supportive housing. As I mentioned before, the Mid-Penn housing is a permanent supportive housing project, and the city helped facilitate that. That was fully funded through state and federal grants. The idea here is we would do the same at the county site. We have the expertise and know-how. That project was about $38 million, and all of that, again, was grant funds, except for the initial funding for pre-development costs that the city put in, about $200,000, and then the federal funding that we put forward through our CDBG grants. The city has determined that the proposed action is not a project under CEQA. Again, it's just an administration agreement. And once a developer is selected, that would, of course, come back to the county and the city to vote upon. For the strategic plan initiative, obviously, the issue of homelessness is affecting us across the city, and it touches upon at least 3, if not all, of the city council goals of safe, livable community, excellent infrastructure, and quality of life. And as I mentioned before, we're not recommending any funding at this time. We anticipate that we will be able to get federal and state grants. What we're asking is to allow us to use the staff that we have on staff to help facilitate this development, which includes the housing division's staff, and we have a Cracker Jack team and myself. And so the recommendation is simply to approve a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into an administration agreement with the county. They have seen this administration agreement already. It has gone and been looked at by their county council, and we anticipate that that should be calendared very shortly. So once you take action tonight, we will be going back to the Board of Supervisors on this agreement. And that's it for my presentation.
Thank you. I'll go to my council members for questions. Councilwoman Craig, any questions? Councilmember Villegas, any questions?
As far as the providing these solutions and everything, what other cities are doing this type of endeavor?
Yeah, there's a lot of cities, the city of Los Angeles, San Francisco, Ventura, Oxnard. I mean, we've heard also a lot going on in Merced. So I think this is an issue that is really confronting a lot of California cities because of the housing crisis.
Now, as far as their results with it, they've been doing it, because obviously they've been doing it for a while. Is it actually reducing homelessness, or is it increasing it?
Well, I think what's really creating the homelessness situation, and we're seeing it in the data, is the housing costs. People are I think it's making a dent. Actually, we're seeing chronic homelessness either the same or less in jurisdictions, but because of the housing prices, and I know that's one thing the state is focused on, it's pushing working people. A lot of the homeless now that we have are working people out into the streets. We also have a growing number of homeless women because of domestic violence as well.
And as far as like the services that they're going to be able to receive there from the county, could you say something to the people in the audience and at home that's watching this? What type of services they're going to be receiving? Mental health, drug interdiction, those types of things?
Yeah, we haven't exactly identified everything, but we know that the best model is to have supportive services on site. That would include housing navigation services to help people find permanent housing. It would include counseling, mental health services, physical health services, because we also have a lot of disabled who are homeless, veteran services as well. So we haven't exactly defined it, but it would be similar to what we're looking at the Mid-Penn Housing Project.
All righty, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember McShane, any questions, sir?
Yeah, a couple things. So how likely is it the county's going to want to play ball?
Very likely. We've been working hand in hand with them. They're interested in us taking on this role because they feel we're better positioned. We have more experience in doing these kind of housing deals. So they saw what we were able to accomplish in Mid-Penn and wanted us to go forward with that.
And has anybody spoken with members of the Board of Supervisors about this?
Well, I can't say we've been directly working with Manny Gonzalez, who's the assistant COA of the county. So we've been working with him and Elliot Robinson, and I'm sure they've briefed the supervisors. And of course, the supervisors already identified 1220 Natividad as a site for the permanent solution.
And what are the chances for the site being utilized this fall for a temporary homeless shelter?
That we would have to discuss and see. They have offered a couple of different sites that we need to look at. So it's possible. I suppose we'd have to get the county to agree to that. And we'd have to move portables there.
Are there any plans to move the portable that's across from the post office right now?
We have to do an analysis on the cost and figure out if it would be cheaper to rent and what the conditions of those portables are.
So it's not moving right now?
No, we're having those discussions, but we want to lock in the permanent solution, so we're not every year talking about the temporary. So this is the right step, and we will continue to have discussions on the temporary.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I just wasn't really clear. So is the county open to a temporary homeless shelter at 1220 Natividad?
I don't want to speak for them.
Yeah.
But we are talking about suitable sites to move it to.
And that's one of them.
That is a conversation we would have with them, yes.
Haven't had the conversation or have?
We have, but there are some they're in the process of doing some remediation, so I think they want to complete that before they make a determination.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Councilmember Davis, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 1220 Natividad Road is going to be the permanent site, correct? Or that's the anticipated permanent site? So theoretically, if you were to move a temporary shelter there, you're going to maybe have to move it again when you start building a permanent site. So it may not be the most fiscally sound decision to move it to that location, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to explore the options of if it's better, it might be renting an existing building.
Perfect. And specifically to the staff report, the city's primary role would be to prepare and solicit an RFP. We've done several of these. One was for the police department, the other for the library. What project delivery method are we looking at on this one?
Yeah, this is an RFP similar to what we did with Mid-Penn Housing. Those are a little bit different because those are P3 arrangements. So we would, express what we want to see on the site and solicit probably affordable housing, nonprofit developers to come up with a proposal, and then we would select the best one, the one that closest comes to what we're looking for on the site. And we do know we've reached out to a few organizations who have done this in other cities and also the Housing Authority. So there have been folks expressing interest.
So almost a partnership within some nonprofit like Mid-Penn or Cheeseburger,
Yeah.
whoever it would be. Okay. And the reason I asked was when we talked about the police station and then with the library having the same developer could significantly reduce costs. Now we have another project being in partnership with the county. If we were to use the same developer again and we're able to build 3 big projects around the same time, is it possible that the cost could be significantly lower and the materials be more accessible?
It could reduce costs, but the problem is to make this happen, we have to layer sophisticated funding sources, and that's not what they do. We have to layer, TCAC, maybe, and, grant funds and CDBG, and that also kicks in new regulations. So that's why we would go with someone who has that expertise.
Okay, so we're probably not going to use the same developer, although we don't want to rule them out. That's not what we're looking at in this project.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Barrera, questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Hunter, can you put on your slide on fiscal impact, please? As you're speaking about the sophisticated funding sources, one of them being CDBG, as you're going through the process, any idea it might impact other agencies that that the council is giving money to? Is there a possibility that their funding may be impacted in order to fund this project?
Not this year, and of course, every year we'd have to look at the funding, and then it would be up to you to decide how you wanted to cut the pie that we get.
Yeah,
So.
and Ms. Hunter, I have the utmost respect for your work because I've seen you work. But in the fiscal impact, you're talking about that you're going to be looking for state, federal grants to make this happen. I think maybe about a month ago we heard a figure, $50 to $70 million. Am I right on that?
It could be, depending if we do the permanent supportive housing, it could be upwards of that.
So here's my question. You're looking for an RFP, find out if the city of Salinas is going to be the project manager. I guess the positive here is that the county and the city are working together, good collaborative effort. I guess my question is, if the city council approves this tonight, then once we start looking at the funding sources, are we stuck being that we said, okay, the majority of the council voted on this, now we have to do it?
No, all of the funding decisions need to come before you, needs to have a public hearing. So this is only us committing our staff resources, our staff time to help facilitate it. And we don't know, there are new sources of funding that are coming down the pike, including, hopefully, in November, there's a housing bond. If it passes, there could be new funding sources. So our intention is, of course, just like the Mid-Penn project, think about how Mid-Penn worked. We committed to working with them, but every step of the way, you had to improve the disposition development agreement. You had to improve the CDB allocations. It would be the same.
And I understand, because you believe in this project, somehow it'll happen. So as the funding, as you're asking, requesting funding, I guess my concern here, you say it won't happen this year, but I think if we find ourselves tight in funding, it would not be favorable for the other agencies that come here seeking CDBG funding, whether it's 5,000, 10,000. I hope they're not impacted.
Yeah, they won't be. One important distinction is the money for like Mid-Penn is a separate pot of money. It's
Yes.
only for home construction
Yes.
or, public infrastructure monies. The public service money is a whole separate pot. So they are in two different camps. It would not affect them.
Good. And here, you put fiscal impact, but anytime I see the general fund, it kind of gets me a little bit nervous. Why is city general fund here mentioned on your fiscal impact?
The only thing that, and of course, you will approve the budget if you decide you don't want to do this, it's fine. The only thing that we sort of anticipate is with the Mid-Penn project, we had some pre-development costs. And so that might be something that comes from the general fund. It might be something we borrow from the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, which you put money into, and then maybe over time is repaid. But we're leaving that there, but there's no commitment right now to the general fund.
And just one last question. Being that this is a county, Monterey County warming shelter, year-round warming shelter, have the other cities bought into it as far as funding sources?
We haven't approached them yet because we are also wanting to push for a similar on the peninsula. We think it needs to be balanced approach. So we really want them to focus on funding in the peninsula, but it might be appropriate for some of the South Valley counties. But the county has told us that they're looking to put their no place like home funding forward. So that's something positive. And that could be upwards, if it gets out of the litigation, upwards of $6 million for this.
Thank you.
Questions, Councilwoman De La Rosa?
Thank you, Mayor. My only question, I sit on the Housing Subcommittee and I've heard, and it's great, but just so the public knows, when we move the modules somewhere, are we, the city, are we going to bear all that cost, or is the county going to help us?
No, we have made no commitment to that. I think it's a discussion that needs to be had with the county about where the warming shelter would be and the feasibility of moving the modulars. I think we're having those discussions right now because we don't know, those are old modulars, whether or not they're gonna make it across town. So we have to look into that detail. And we're having those discussions to see what's feasible.
Okay. That's all my question. Thank you, Megan.
My question will be for the city manager. My understanding is the property on West Alisal belongs to the city of Salinas now.
That's correct, Mayor.
And we have no intentions of leaving the warming shelter there after May 31st.
The current agreement with the warming shelters with the county ends May 31st, correct? That area is designated for parking. We have had discussions, as Megan said, Mayor. I see the Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, Manny Gonzalez, back there, who's been our partner. But we are just starting those conversations, and we're having meaningful conversations about that site and options for a warming shelter while we build a permanent shelter.
Thank you. We'll now open this up for public comment. Anyone in the public that would like to comment on this item?
Kevin Dayton, Government Affairs Director of the Salinas City Center Improvement Association. First, thank you for the questions that you were asking. the board, I believe, is pleased to see this first step happen because it is a step forward. You're getting an agreement in place. Hopefully the Board of Supervisors will be willing to sign it too, and we will have to work to make sure that they do that. There is some concern, however, and it's very hard to pin down. Obviously, this project, if it does happen and it does get the funding, is going to take a few years. So where is the temporary shelter going to be located in the meantime? And we hear that they're supposed to be out of there, out of the downtown area. Well, maybe not out of the downtown area, out of that specific spot. But as each week goes by and a lot of questions, such as the ones that Councilman McShane asked, don't really have a clear answer to it, you begin to get the suspicion that maybe as the fall rolls around, people will say, well, you know, there's a lot of homeless downtown and there's some services there. It would probably make sense for us to keep the temporary shelter downtown next winter, and then maybe the following winter and the following winter. And I know that some people on the Salinas City Center Improvement Association Board have collected a big wad of documents from merchants talking about their experiences trying to do commerce downtown and dealing with the homeless problem. Not sure all of them are completely accurate, but you know what? It's obvious there's a problem, especially if you walk there. And I urge you, please get specifics from your staff as soon as possible about where the temporary shelter is going to be for this coming winter. Give us an answer soon, because I will say right now, the rate things are going, it's going to be downtown this winter. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good job, Kevin. I'm Frank Saunders, also a member of the SCCIA, and I just can't believe this project. I mean, it's a monstrosity. It's years and years away, $40 to $70 million. Think about that. So when the question is asked, what are we going to do with these temporaries? That's the critical question. We still need the homeless services. You acknowledge that. The county acknowledges that. Move the damn things over there. And for crying out loud, they're not that bad a shape. I've looked at them carefully. I walk that block constantly. These things can be moved. But if you don't get a bid and you have no idea what the cost is, then why are we even bothering? This is ridiculous. We do not want any more of this homeless service in the downtown, I tell you. It is not happening for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders.
Bill Harris, resident of Salinas Creek Bridge area. You know, what's happening with these progressive liberals, the Democrat Party's been taken over in Sacramento. It's being taken over all over the Central Coast, San Francisco and other areas. We Americans in California who are here legally, and you have a magnet here of freebies, and the word has got out. Why did it increase in 1 year? What did you say, over 50%? I mean, the free entitlements, look what's happening with the other areas that we, the citizens, have the blunt of taxes. Right here now, Salinas is a prime example. Los Angeles area, South area. We, our California citizens, are sick and tired of what the progressive liberal party is doing. And are you going to be a part of it? You build these shelters, more are going to come. Why are there so many? They're all over the Creek Bridge area, in the creek area, the tree lines, and you guys can't flush them out and put them someplace. And they're coming, more of them are coming in every week. We see it, the citizens of Salinas see it. When are you going to knock off this nonsense of providing a magnet for people to come for the freebies? Enough said. Travis Allen for governor.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Seeing no one else, oh, she must have got lost in the crowd. Recognize the hat.
Marianne Worden. I just came from Yuma 2 weeks ago, or a week ago. And because of my son, who passed away down there, and had lots of stuff, we've been visiting the homeless shelter down there. It's nothing fancy, but they have a shelter for women, and they have a shelter for men. There, I believe she told me they could have at least 75 for the men and about the same for women. Plus they have a thrift store. And I was impressed. It wasn't fancy, but they're getting ready to build a new one. It's not in the outskirts of town, but in the industrial area. But the people that were involved in there, I was very impressed. We also gave them a pickup because they needed one. But, you know, we need to do something for these people. And if we're going to build one in Natividad, that's close to the hospitals and the places that they need to be taken care of. And I don't think, you know, when I moved out there, we had a jail out there in that same area. And I really think we need to do something for them. Because I know we're going to do a tax thing. We're worrying about cutting the taxes on the marijuana growers. I don't think we should. Because that's why we have a lot of our homeless. Because they have been using the drugs. When I rode with the police, most of those people had started out smoking marijuana and got into heroin or alcohol. So the cost of business, you have to pay taxes. I have to pay taxes. Please
Thank you,
don't
Ms.
cut the
Warden.
taxes on them and get the homeless taken
Thank
care of.
you. Seeing no one else, we'll now close public comment on that item. Take it back to Councilman. Councilmember McShane.
Yeah, I'm happy to move the item. I
Second.
think the leadership on staff's part to dedicate the time and resources to a permanent solution is critical. The point has to be made now that a temporary shelter solution needs to be discussed. To the likes of Kevin Dayton, to the likes of the CEO of the chamber, to anybody else that's here that has a stake in downtown, really, really get moving on this. As a council, I pledge myself, and I hope that the mayor and others will consider maybe even a special ad hoc effort to work with the County Board of Supervisors. I've said before, I see the county board members, some of us do at these regular regional meetings, and I go through the laundry list of things that I know we're working on, but I just am not convinced that a majority of the Board of Supervisors politically, not policy-wise, the staff that Megan's working with, I'm sure, see unicorns and rainbows with this proposal. But at the policy level, I'm just not convinced that the leadership is completely on board, particularly as it relates to a temporary solution. We are going to be right back where we were. And anybody that's a stakeholder in this challenge, whether it's a property owner, parishioner, or anybody else, will tell you that the second that shelter is shut down, the need doesn't go away. It has the possibility to make the challenge even greater. I think if there were talking points on this subject, it would be, as we approach the county and members of the public, we have to cover our bases. It can't just be not in our town. I think that's short-sighted. The many partners need to be talking, and I think Gloria's point to, well, will the county be paying for this? I've heard from my sources that the county budget does not include money to move the buildings and or even fund a temporary solution. We as the biggest city in the county are looked to as the only location for a shelter, whether temporary or permanent. So again, to the leadership organizations in the audience that have a stake in this, I hope that a letter will be written. I hope that efforts will be put forth to visit with county leadership, not the staff. The staff are one thing that I think the city staff have covered, but the County Board of Supervisors have to want this solution as bad as we do. Otherwise, we're going to be right back where we were next fall. So that's all.
Councilmember Villegas, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Megan Hunter as far as what she talked about as far as the housing situation is contributing a lot to this. This is just a cascading effect. You're seeing it all over the city. You see the fact that rental prices are going up, housing prices are going up, and what happens, more families move into these houses and crowd them, then it boils over into the streets and you have cars all through the streets. It's just a cascading effect of policies that have taken years, and this is the result of it. It's not that the policies were, or the money was applied poorly, it was applied appropriately for what was, and that's what happened. These are the results of what we're seeing throughout the years. And when you go back and you look at all these and you analyze it, it's like, was this the best thing to do inclusionary housing? No, it wasn't. I mean, we have a lottery next week for 30 families, and I think 9 of them are going to win. And I guarantee, yes, you survey those people that win, they're going to say, yeah, inclusionary housing works. But the other 21 are going to say, it didn't work for me. Instead of allowing builders to come in here and do their job as far as supplying the demand of the thing, we've gone a different way, and we think, and politicians have gone and tried to engineer something that they think they can do it better than what the marketplace can do, and they can't, and it's proven. And we're seeing it, and and the city's suffering because of it. You go back to the homeless thing, everybody wants to help out. You don't want to see people homeless. I don't want to see them downtown. It affects the businesses and the tax base, and it needs to be moved away from there to a place to where it is adjacent to where they can get the services, and the Natividad hospital's there. We are the county seat, and the county is going to have to provide those services. We don't have mental health people. We don't have drug interdiction people. We don't have those types of services that the county can provide. To have it right next to it makes sense. Getting a bid, like the gentleman said, and moving these portables down there. I've worked in the school districts, moving portables. Yeah, there is a cost, but what is the cost? Is it's going to be more for that versus losing the tax base from the revenues that could come into the downtown area by cleaning it up? It's a policy decision. As far as with the permanent homeless shelter, I don't like the name because it seems like it's going to make this problem permanent. We're saying we're going to have permanent homeless for here to eternity, and that's ridiculous. What I do ask is that the city, as far as its mission statement, that we have some sort of way of giving these people a hand up, whatever they need, the skills, get them off drugs, whatever it is that they need to get them so they can get into their own housing. But a lot of it's going to depend on whether or not builders come in here and provide the necessary housing that the citizens need. It's not an easy issue, and I applaud Supervisor Alejo for, supporting this spot, because he understands that they need to have these services right next door, not down across the street. They got to get across the town and then come back to the warming shelter down here. I think it's a bad area, and we're seeing the results of it. You see the homeless in the streets, you see them in the doorways, and it does affect business negatively. I hear it from people that say, I don't go downtown because I don't like getting harassed by people, the homeless people. Okay. Now, as far as the going forward, yeah, it's going to be a cost, and we just have to have some sort of mechanism to make sure that if it's not working out and we are increasing our homeless population, and we already increased it 57%, I don't want it to increase. I'd rather see it decrease. But I understand the thing as far as being a magnet for people, because if they're not getting the services in different areas, they're going to say, oh, well, Salinas does this, let's go there. And then what are we going to look at? We're going to look at 2,000? I mean, these policies don't work. And people need to wake up and, go to, get the word out. Make sure you're voting for the people that are willing to help out, but there has to be some sort of responsibility on the homeless as well to get themselves up. You know, and you're going to have the chronic homeless that just want to do that. There's going to be people that just want to do drugs and stay homeless. You know, that's just the way it is. But I think that going forward, it needs to be next to the services, so they're in the area that they need to be in to be able to receive those services to help them out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Craig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the issue that we're dealing with today is an administrative agreement between the city and the county. So I'm happy to support that. I do want to acknowledge, as the city becomes the project manager for the overall homeless shelter at 1220 Natividad, one of the things, and I'm saying this primarily because Manny Gonzalez is in the room as well, I would ask that we have our top staff engaging the other cities in the discussion. It doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be a part of the financial plan for 1220 Natividad. But one of the things that I've really witnessed this past week, I was at an event for Gathering for Women, which is a new homeless shelter that's being built on the peninsula for women. $2.75 million campaign servicing 400 women on the Monterey Peninsula. And I found it fascinating that they're not engaging the city of Monterey, nor are they engaging the county as far as I'm aware. And so I see these silos when you're talking about homelessness as an overall county. I see these well-intended and very well-organized and well-supported service providers that are doing good things in their respective cities, but really countywide. If we're looking to have 1220 Natividad be the first part of that, and perhaps a site over in Marina or a site over in Monterey be the second part of that, let's engage those cities now in that discussion so that they understand the process, they understand what we're doing in Salinas, and they embrace it for that side of town as well. Thank you.
Councilwoman De La Rosa, comment?
Wow, it's great to hear that the peninsula is doing something with the homelessness. So I just wanted to say that we need to move forward, Megan. We need to start having those conversations now because winter is just around the corner, and just hearing everyone's comments, I'm very supportive that we need to have a plan as soon as possible. Also, talking about services, it's too bad that the county, and sometimes, you know, we just need to look ahead, the future. The county used to have the Department of Social Services right next to the health department where it's at right now, 1270 Natividad Road. But they moved it over here where it's at now, over here on, what is it, Romy Lane? They moved those services over there. So it's too bad that happened because we have a lot of people that have to walk and get to that building right now to get those services. So, geez, it'd be nice if there was maybe in the future some kind of sub-building with, you know, services that provide social services like Medi-Cal, you know, applying for Medi-Cal and food stamps, like we have over here in Romy Lane, so that population, our residents, could go there. Because if not, then they have to walk all the way over here. So anyways, those are my comments, and I think we need to work on this as soon as possible.
Councilmember Barrera, any comments, sir?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I think this is exciting times here for us. I mean, we can't, people are homeless for different reasons. I was at the Alisal School District, and I know it's an administrative policy decision today, but I'm only hearing drug addicts and mental health. You know, there's a lot of families that get up early in the morning before they go to work. They take their children to school to a babysitter, and every day is like that. Some of them live in their cars, some of them sleep on a couch in the living room. Hard-working people. They just can't afford a studio apartment. So, Ms. Hunter, Mr. Corpus, I think we have an excellent challenge here, and it'll produce a level of confidence. I think the Business Association is ready to work with us in partnership. I think being that you've already designated 1220 Natividad Road as the place where it's going to happen, it would be fantastic to figure out a way to move one or two modules, whatever it is, figure out a plan. Mr. Manny Gonzalez is here with the county. Figure out a plan. It's county property already. This way, people will start getting adjusted to the property. And I'm just thinking as a lay person here. But if people are coming to this body for answers, I think you're asking for an RFP. The city of Salinas may be the general manager. Well, let's not wait. If this council is going to go in that direction, let's start working that property, Mr. Corpus, and that way people will start trusting us here. That it's going to start over there. Thank you.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilmember Barrera. We do have a major issue with homeless, but homeless is just is a root of a different problem. And there's many different reasons why some people don't have homes. Some of them do use drugs. A lot of them have mental health illness. I know for a fact in our county jail, 48% of those incarcerated have mental health illness and are taking psychotropic medications, yet we provide no wraparound services when they're released. And we wonder why recidivism and why they get arrested again and taken right back. Something I really like about you, Ms. Hunter, and your team, and Anastasia's in the back there, is that the passion and the commitment that you put into the work that you do, specifically with our less fortunate members of our communities, like those who don't have homes. And the passion that I've seen when Anastasia's up here giving her presentations about this homeless shelter and the wraparound services and this collaboration with the County of Monterey to provide those services to give people a hand up. Not a handout, but a hand up. But I think we also have to take into consideration that we will have a portion of our population who need a lot more than just a hand up. That'll, no matter how much we do, may not ever be enough for them because they have just used so much drugs or they've had so many other issues in their life. And if you look back, and I did some readings back when we actually had mental health institutions and when they were shut down, and it seems now that our county jails are our new mental health institutions throughout the state of California. Homelessness has been around for a long time. I don't think that, I hope that we could find a solution, but the great minds that we have at all of our universities still haven't come up with something that works for everybody because we're all human beings, we're all individuals, and we have different circumstances that gave us different experiences in life. But I think that here in Salinas, we can focus on what can we do with the 1,200 that we do have, and how can we provide wraparound services in an area where they can be safe. And as far as our business community is concerned, I do hear what you're saying, and I do understand the concerns of business. I would like to see this as a challenge to our business community instead of filing lawsuits and going at heads and wasting money that way. Let's work together and come up with the solution instead of wasting money on attacking a group of people. Let's work together and find out how can we use that money and maybe provide a temporary service or a temporary shelter somewhere else and help move it. I think when we start focusing, we all have the same goal, is to make sure that these people have the services they need, that they can be safe. On the side of business, they want to be able to operate and maintain a living. And these people that don't have places to live would just like the food and eat. And we do live in a first world country, and nobody in a first world country should have to worry about where they're going to sleep and go starving. If it was a different country, it's a different thing, but we live in the United States. We have a lot of food, a lot of waste. People should be able to get a meal when they're hungry and not starve. Thank you.
Thank you. When we agreed to move the warming shelter over here on West Alisal, we were assured by the Board of Supervisors this would end on May the 31st. I'm a firm believer that we have to hold their feet to the fire, and I have spoken to 3 of them in the last week about moving it. They're of the belief that it won't happen. It's going to happen. We will not have the warming shelter there as of June the 1st. The county is a responsible party for the money that comes from the feds and the state that provide social services programs. By us doing this, we may have to take away from our employees. I think what we need to do is work with them, help them develop this shelter, but they have to understand the money has to come from them. It can't come off of our employees' backs, or we can't do it all for them. I have a mayor's meeting scheduled for Friday. All the mayors have been talking about this. We have super support from the South County mayors about having a shelter on this side and then having one on the peninsula. The people on the peninsula have a harder time understanding that it's their problem as well. And having gone to school over there, the Italians understand they don't let their people lay on the streets and sleep. They take them in, they raise their families up and take care of them. I think we all have to understand that this is a problem for all of us, and we will move forward with this matter. City Clerk, the vote, please.
Councilmember Barrera?
Aye.
Councilmember Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember De La Rosa?
Aye.
Councilmember McShane?
Yes.
Councilmember Villegas?
Yes.
Mayor Gunter?
Aye. Now we're going to move to item number